Hi everyone. This is Tommy from University of Southern California, and my um, collaborator, Kafei from Yale University. We are going to talk about hyperrating and evidentiality in two languages, Cantonese and Vietnamese. So to give a very brief introduction, rating to subject constructions displays cross-linguistic variations. Hyperrating is disallowed in English. We have like the standard weight rating in 1A, and however, rating crossing a CP boundary is not allowed in English. However, I mean, in addition to like many other languages where like hyperrating is attested, in Cantonese and Vietnamese, we also observe an apparent hyperrating pattern with some adjective verbs. So the baseline examples is given in two. This is the ordinary usage of adjective verbs, where like I feel like or I hear the rain will not stop, and which is the same for Vietnamese. And importantly, these adjective verbs demonstrate an alternation in terms of argument structure. And we call these verbs like rating adjective verbs. To see why again is name of like rating, let's focus on like 3A. So in 3A, we have a very similar sentence as 2A. However, now the surface subject is the rain. And we still have the same adjective verbs, which is like feel like here or and like here. So, and the embedded subject, which is supposed to be associated with stop, is missing. So it seems that like we have a very like apparent example of like raising out of a finite clause. And adding to the puzzle, we also observe that like the same alternation is not observed with other adjective verbs. And we call these verbs like non-raising adjective verbs. So in 4, we see that like the same construction is not compatible with other adjective verbs. Like we have like field with the resultative suffix, and also no, like they are not allowed in the same sentence as in 3. And the same goes for Vietnamese. And the availability of such alternation crosscuts the class of adjective verbs in both languages. And for the sake of time, we will only give examples in Cantonese, while like the same goes for Vietnamese. So in this paper, we argue for 3 claims. So we first show that like hyperrating constructions are attested in both Cantonese and Vietnamese, meaning like the above sentences are really involve like a raising out of a finite CP. And second, the availability of hyperrating is associated with evidentiality. We suggest that like hyperrating constructions are only possible for adjective verbs that presumes indirect evidence for their clausal complements. And lastly, like we propose a phase deactivation account for hyperrating in these languages, following the spirit in Rakowski and Richards, Nunes, and also Harvard's recent proposal. So there are 2 implications of this proposal. The exceptional rating behavior are related to the lexical semantics of predicates. So suggesting that like rating possibilities may not be entirely idiosyncratic. Second, this paper reports another feature which we claim to be like evidence feature, whose agree relation with phase may unlock or open up a phase in addition to selectional features or and 5 features. So here's the roadmap, and I'm going to go through like the arguments for hyperrating. So descriptively, like the sentences in 3 share the schema in 5. So we have a schema like this. Like this is like just like in terms of like its description, we have a subject and the RAV, the raising adjective verbs, and then VO. What we are trying to convince you is that like the subject is indeed in its derived position, so it's not an Hanning topic, and the movement displays like A movement properties, so it's not like topic movement, and the VO clause is a finite CP. not a reduced clause or small clause. So the first point is made clear by resumptive or co-reference pronouns. So the surface subject cannot co-index with an embedded pronoun, suggesting that like they're in a derived position. So 6 is the baseline. So we have a base generated topic, and in that case, we can have a resumptive pronoun, which is in the embedded clause. So the sentence says like, as for main, I feel like he will not come. However, the same strategy does not work for in like in hybrid. I mean, in the construction under discussion where we have main here, and it is not possible to have like the resumptive pronoun in the embedded clause. So this suggests that like the surface subject is derived from the embedded clause. And we apply the standard, other standard test for locality, where like it cannot, like the subject in the RAV construction, like the racing attitude verb construction, cannot cross an island. So we have a DP embedded. We have a DP, a complex DP in the embedded subject position, and we cannot extract, or like the surface subject cannot be associated with the predicate within the island. And also we observed that like the displacement of the subject of a sentential idiom retains the idiomatic reading. So in 9, we have this distilled, displayed from the embedded clause while maintaining the idiomatic reading, which is like, I feel like he or she is aiming at the moon. So the second set of data shows that like the movement is indeed like a movement instead of a bar movement. So there is an subject-object asymmetry. So the movement in 11, I mean, that should be in 10, privileges like subjects over objects. So which is an asymmetry attributable to a locality constraint for a movement. So let me walk you through the example in 10A and B. So in 10A, while it is possible to extract the subject from the embedded clause to the matrix clause, it is not possible to do the same to the direct object or the indirect object while like skipping over the embedded subject. Like both B and C are not acceptable. So subject are privileged. And we also have quite a long example, I mean a long sentence for like demonstrating the new binding possibility of this movement. So the surface subject can bind a pronominal variable in matrix clause after movement, as shown by the contrast in the sentences in 11. So before movement, it is not possible to bind the higher pronouns in this sentence. So like, I mean, the sentence, I mean, both A and B are intended to mean, according to its origin, I heard that every piece of diamond will have different lusters. So while like the pronoun in the adverbial clause cannot be bound by every in the embedded clause, this is not surprising because there's no C commanding relation between them. I mean, at least like the universal quantifier is not C commanding the pronoun. However, after the movement, if we raise this the universal quantifier to the surface subject to the matrix clause, then we obtain a new binding possibility, which is like we have like every binding the pronoun in the adverbial clause, which will give rise to bound variable reading. And the last thing I want to convince you is that like the complement clause is indeed a finite CP. So this is suggested by like the appearance of like a C hat, which is like wa in Cantonese, and we have like the Vietnamese counterpart here. And another evidence is that concerns like embedded topics. So I mean, assuming that topics are base generated in the CP CP peripheral position, we see that the embedded class can have its own topic. So in 12A, I feel like among so many things, main only watch this one. So we have the embedded topic. I mean, we have the topic in the embedded class, and this is the same for our racing construction, where like we have like our main race from the embedded class, while like the class here can still like accommodate topic. So showing that like the class is large enough, and this is like what we take this as evidence for its status as a CP. So here I will hand into Ka-Fai on evidentiality.
Sure. So let me share my screen. And so I'm Ka-Fai, and so here so we are moving on to the third section, that is the role of evidentiality in HAB racing. So we have seen that the apparent RAV construction is actually HAB racing, but we still have one remaining issue, which is that why there is an asymmetry between the two sets of adjective verbs as we've seen in the introduction. And our suggestion is RAVs, they are all come from an evidential requirement in their lexicosemantics, which requires the adjective report to be based on indirect evidence. So they are indirect evidence based. But for non-racing ones, they are not indirect evidence based. So we can start from some near minimal pairs first. So for racing adjective verbs, we have feel like here, but after adding a resultative suffix do, so like feel result, it is so it becomes a non-racing verb. And so the same goes for here. So after adding a do, it is a non-racing one, and also gets. So descriptively, do indicates a result of or accomplishment of an action, and it is used to form verbs of perception. So like in 14, this is a context with direct evidence. So Ming is playing piano now, and you hear the sound, and you say, so I hear Ming playing piano. You can only say this by using the verb with do, but not the verb without the, which is not racing, which is a racing adjective verb in its transitive usage. And so do requires direct evidence, while while racing adjective verbs they are incompatible with direct evidence. So the same goes for their RAV, their racing usage. And this requirement also applies to other RAVs. So like belief, it contains inferential evidence or suspect, so or seem. So all these racing adjective verbs are indirect evidence based. So they are either in inferential evidence or hearsay evidence. But for non-racing ones, the verbs with do, they are direct sensory evidence based. And for know and remember, here they are they come with direct evidence like factive interpretation. And for think, they are underspecified. So they can be indirect or direct evidence or no evidence at all. And so there is indeed additional evidence for this distinction. And so first is it patterns with epistemic modals in English. And so like without epistemic modal must, it is fine to assert a proposition of raining. So it's raining under context of direct evidence, seeing the rain outside. But you cannot use epistemic modal here. So it must be raining is infelicitous. you can only use FSMIC model in an indirect evidence context. So like you are seeing red ring here, and you are knowing ring is the only possible cause. So so this is the first additional evidence. And the second comes from the correlation between racing possibility and evidentiality in Romanian. So in Romanian, their perception verbs may come. So like they can take a CP with direct evidence. So like I see his hands are dirty, and also indirect evidence. So like I've heard that so someone is fixing the house. So it is a hearsay usage. And only the second usage, which is indirect evidence, may undergo hyperracing to object. So like this is the embedded subject, and it is raised to the matrix object position, and it is correlated with indirect evidence. And so, yep. So we have established that hyperracing and indirect evidentiality are actually correlated. And so here we are going to our proposal. And so standard generative theories actually too restricted that they rule out any instance of hyperracing. So by two theoretical means. First is the ban on improper movement. So you cannot raise so you can raise a elements from an A bar position. And the second is the PIC. So you cannot directly raise something out of a phase and skipping the edge position. And so there are proposals that account for hyperracing. The first one is to relax the first band. So so they spec CP can be A position. Then hyperracing is successively cyclic. In Fong 2019. And also we have another branch of proposal that deactivate PIC. So under these kinds of proposal, PIC is suspended and hyperracing is a one-step movement. So and this is the way we are pursuing. And so our proposal is PIC can be obviated under certain circumstances. So specifically, it can be suspended by an agreed relation between the matrix verb and the entire CP. And the agreed relation is in terms of a syntactic feature, evidential feature, and this is responsible for the indirect evidence interpretation. And so this bears so it is very like the approaches to locality in in all these kind of phase unlocking approaches. And so here is our proposal, and our so first we have two C hats. The first C hat does not contain evidential feature, and the second one contains an evidential feature. So the RAVs contains an uninterpretable and evidential feature, which agree with that CP. And so so this is our derivation. First agreement is between the RAV, little v, and the embedded CP. So they agree with the evidential feature, and thus unlocking the phase. So PIC in this stage is suspended. And so we can now undergo another agreement relation between the embedded subject and the EPP feature on the little v. And after the agreement, so the subject is raised to the spec little v position, and it is made possible because PIC is now suspended by the first agreement relation that unlock the phase of the embedded CP. So this is basically our main idea. And so so I'm not repeating our implications, but so we welcome any comments and questions. And thank you.
Thank you.